Greetings, everyone. I'm Laurie Lane-Zucker, founder and CEO of Impact Entrepreneur, and welcome to our webinar. And a special welcome to all those members of the Impact Entrepreneur Network attending this webinar today. Impact Entrepreneur is a global network of systems-minded changemakers, 21,000 entrepreneurs, investors, scholars, and students of social and environmental innovation who believe that this work needs to be done within a transformational framework. We build companies, we invest in them, but we also understand that we have to collaborate to build a new business paradigm and ecosystem around them in order to find a more authentically sustainable way forward. So if you agree with this last statement and are not yet a member, please join the network. It is free. The only entry fee is your commitment to the business of change. Impact Entrepreneur has two series of webinars that we offer to network members and others. The first series, of which this particular webinar is a part, is called Building an Impact Economy. This series offers content that is practical, hands-on, and instructive, usually in the form of slide presentations or topical panel discussions like this one. The second series is called Luminarias, and it offers content that is more reflective, contextual, and inspirational, and usually takes the form of virtual fireside chats. Our next webinar will be on Thursday, June 27th. I will be welcoming TBLI Group's Robert Rubenstein for a Luminarias fireside chat. Robert, who's based in the Netherlands, is one of the true veterans of impact investing in ESG and one of the most knowledgeable people on the subject of how impact investing is developing in Europe, a subject that we will discuss at length on the webinar. After that, we will be culminating season 1 of our webinar series on July 18th with a major panel discussion on impact investing in global development, with a star-studded panel that includes Giselle Young from the Global Impact Investing Network, Doreen Shanaz from Asia IIX, and Assistant Secretary General of the United Nations and the UN's Chief Economist, Elliot Harris. That webinar is part of our diversity and inclusion subset of webinars, guest moderated by the wonderful Jillian Marcel. I should also mention that next month, Impact Entrepreneur will be launching a YouTube channel, Impact Entrepreneur TV, and we'll be posting selections of webinars from season 1 on that channel as we prepare for this coming autumn's launch of season 2. Information on all these and other programs are regularly updated on the calendar on our website, which is www.impactalchemist.com. I would like to thank our sponsors for our webinar series, Rockefeller Philanthropy Advisors and their Scaling Solutions Initiative. Now, I'm extremely pleased to introduce our panel to you. It was late last year when I started talking to today's guest panel leader, Laura Callanan, about the intersection of impact investing, media, and the arts. That first conversation took place right around the time that Erica Karp, one of our recent webinar guests, and her firm Cornerstone Capital released a report entitled Creativity in the Arts, an Emerging Impact Investing Theme. And I'm going to share that link on the chat with you right now so you can access it. It's a really good report. And it's a report in which Laura and her firm Upstart Collab are heavily featured. Now, as someone who has spent much of my career in the arts and media, having, for example, worked in the foreign and art film division of a major motion picture company and having led for 13 years an international environmental magazine and book publisher, I have great fondness and respect for these industries and the role that they play in both in educating and in inspiring transformative change. And I was therefore very excited to have a chance to work with Laura, who is one of the key field builders in this nexus, to produce a program that looked at how impact investing can engage and is engaging with the world of social impact media. Laura has gathered a truly exceptional panel of experts for this program, and she will moderate the conversation. And let me now introduce the participants, starting first with our guest moderator, Laura Callanan. Laura is the founding partner of Upstart Collab, which is disrupting how creativity is funded by connecting impact investing to the creative economy. Laura was Senior Deputy Chairman of the National Endowment for the Arts, leading all grant-making programs, operations, and research before launching Upstart Collab in 2015. Previously, Laura was a consultant with McKinsey & Company's Social Sector Office and Associate Director of the Rockefeller Foundation, where in addition to her responsibilities managing the endowment, she led the foundation's first impact investing efforts. Welcome, Laura.
Hi, Laurie. Thank you so much for inviting us here today.
Great. Now let me introduce the panelists. Julie Christeas is the founder and CEO of Tandom Pictures, a New York-based production company founded in 2010. She has produced several feature films, including Bloodstripe, which won the jury prize for Best Narrative Film at the LA Film Festival, Wildlight, and The Sleepwalker. Julie also executive produced The Eyes of My Mother and Monogamy. Among other films Julie has produced are the documentary Dukali's Dream, starring Hugh Jackman, and Ghost Team. Julie recently produced Bushwick Beats, which premiered at the Bushwick Film Festival in October of 2018. Julie, would you say a quick hello?
Unmuting myself. Hi, everyone. I'm so thrilled to be here. Thank you, Laurie and Laura, for inviting me. Great,
thanks. Jess Jacobs is an actress, producer, and activist known for her work supporting women's rights and in media and entertainment. She is co-founder of a New York-based women-led creative development and production company called Invisible Pictures. Invisible Pictures is producing film, TV, documentary, and digital short-form content, focusing on underrepresented stories not traditionally highlighted in dominant culture. Invisible Pictures' first feature film presentation, Bull, will premiere at the Cannes Film Festival in May 2019. I guess that was last month. Jess is one of the Real Leader magazine's 100 visionary leaders and was the recipient of the 2018 Future is Female Award at the International Conference on Family Planning, the largest global convening on family planning. Jess, would you say a quick hello?
Yes, hi everyone. I'm so happy to be here, and thank you, Laura and Laurie, for the invitation.
Thank you. Charles D. King is founder and CEO of Macro, a leading media company representing the voice and perspectives of people of color. Founded in January 2015, King oversees the company's focus on creating, developing, producing, and financing film, television, digital content, tech companies, and brands driven by people of color that encompass universal themes to which all people can connect and relate. Formerly a partner and senior agent in the motion picture department at William Morris Endeavor, King was the first African-American partner in the company's 100+ year history and the first ever African-American partner at any major talent agency. Macro's film projects have received 9 Oscar nominations. Charles, would you say hello?
Good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you, Laurie and Laura, for inviting me to participate in this conversation.
Great, thank you, Charles. Next is Gloria O'Neill, serving as President and Chief Executive Officer for Cook Inlet Tribal Council since 1998. Gloria O'Neill has led the organization's growth in becoming one of the most effective and innovative service providers in Alaska and the nation. Ms. O'Neill has also established CITC as an emergent impact investor focused on fusing traditional Alaska storytelling, culture, and values with modern technology. Through its for-profit subsidiary, CITC Enterprises, CITC has established an innovative model of sustainability, breaking new ground in social enterprise and impact investing. Hello, Gloria.
Good morning. It's very nice to be here with you to share our story, and I really appreciate the opportunity to engage in the conversation.
Great,
I should say good afternoon. It's morning for me in Alaska.
Bright and early too. Okay, I'm going to pass the baton over now to Laura Callanan, who will lead the panel discussion for the next 45 minutes or so. Laura, all yours.
Thank you so much. Welcome, everyone. As Laurie introduced me, I am Laura Callanan. I am the founding partner of Upstart CoLab. Upstart CoLab is disrupting how creativity is funded, and we do that by connecting impact investing to the creative economy. So I spend a lot of my time defining those two terms, impact investing, by which I mean investments, not grants, not donations, but investments that are made with the intention to generate both social and environmental impact, as well as a financial return. And I spend a lot of my time defining what we mean by the creative economy. The creative economy is the economy of art and design, culture, heritage, and innovation. It represents more than 4.3% of the total US economy, $804 billion, 10 million jobs. And for us at Upstart CoLab, we define the creative economy by focusing on a set of industries. Specifically, we focus on ethical fashion, sustainable food, social impact media, other creative businesses that don't fit into those first three categories, and creative places or real estate projects that are tied to the creative economy. So for today's discussion, we're going to be talking about social impact media, specifically focused on film and TV and video games. Media represents a very high leverage impact opportunity. Media can inform social attitudes, it can change individual behaviors, and it can even influence government policy. Our conversation today is with 4 leaders from throughout the social impact media space, and they're going to talk to you about how they are bringing diversity, equity, and inclusion to film, TV, and video games, how they're transforming film and TV production to be green and environmentally sustainable, and how they're demonstrating the cutting edge how cutting edge media can preserve and share traditional culture and heritage. Obviously, since we're talking about this in the context of impact investing, we're also going to touch on how investors are able to make financial returns and drive deep social impact through the media sector. So recognizing that social impact media is new for a lot of impact investors, throughout the conversation today, we will also be highlighting ways in which investors can mitigate their investment risk and they can strengthen their social impact. So I'd like to invite Jess Jacobs to be our first speaker and to tell us a bit about Invisible Pictures and how Invisible is telling authentic stories.
Thank you, Laura. Again, really happy to be here and appreciate the opportunity to share a bit about the work that we're doing and engage in conversation. Laurie mentioned a bit in his introduction, but I'll just go over it again. Invisible Pictures is a film, television, digital, and documentary production company focusing on authentic stories traditionally underrepresented in dominant culture. What we talk about when we talk about development and production, for anybody who is unfamiliar, development is taking intellectual property, bringing on writers, and developing that content into scripted form. It is then putting the talent pieces together, so hiring the director, hiring the actors, and then moving into production and crewing up and actually bringing the piece all the way through to execution and to delivery to a distribution company. So that is what Invisible does. We don't, at this stage, actually finance content itself. We have third-party partners or collaborate with people like Macro, who you'll hear about later, to actually bring the financing to put the content into production. Invisible Pictures was founded about 1.5 years ago by myself and my producing partner, Audrey Rosenberg. Audrey is a 20-year veteran of the industry, and I've been working as an actor for a number of years. And when we met, we identified an opportunity. We saw that Hollywood was moving towards diversity, which is incredibly important. Diversity of representation. It's the sort of thing, if you can't see it, you can't be it. And so diversity of representation in our industry really allows for people around the world to see themselves in different positions. Black Panther did an incredible thing with Black stories and also Black scientists. You have films like Crazy Rich Asians, even something like Get Out or Lady Bird, which is a smaller film but was up for the Oscar, in which people in front of the camera are also a part of the development process behind the camera. So at Invisible Pictures, we saw that while this diversity was happening, there was an opportunity still to formalize what it might look like to actually move to authentic storytelling. As I mentioned, the word that I'm looking for is define. We define authenticity at Invisible Pictures as the community that's centrally represented, or the identity that's centrally represented on screen, being a part of the process throughout the writing, throughout the development, as I mentioned before. The The motto that we have sort of developed over here is nothing about us without us. And that has led us to develop, as Laurie mentioned before, a film which was at Cannes just last month in the Uncertain Regard section, which was focused on the Black cowboy culture in Houston. Our director, Annie Silverstein, she worked with the Black cowboy community in Texas, brought them in, heard their stories, and used those stories to develop this content, and they actually ended up being actors in the piece. Which was fabulous. So when that is released later this year in early 2020, we're still putting our distribution together, but that'll be something where you'll be able to really see what Invisible Pictures stands for. Another piece that we just worked on was a short form digital series with Topic, which is a New York-based studio. And we shot in New Orleans and used a lot of the stories of New Orleans and the history and the rich culture there to inform the content, which was a psychological thriller content. And it was a directing duo called Cootie and Chike with whom we worked. And Chike was born and raised in New Orleans. And so having that really authentic connection to the place allowed for the content to resonate in a different way. In this conversation that Audrey and I have been having at Invisible Pictures around authenticity, around representation, what we identified, and specifically in conversation with an activist whose book we recently optioned, we were sitting down for a meeting and she said to us, I really, really want to make sure that the people who this story is for, I really want to make sure that they see it. So a certain segment of the population who work in a certain industry, I really want to make sure that those people see it. And sitting around the table, Audrey and I were like, of course, like, yes, that's what we stand for. We're here to help you. And we went home and we realized that there wasn't actually a way in which the audiences were engaged in development processes and in sort of understanding where those audiences actually are and where they're watching in order to make sure that we're targeting them and that we're developing content specifically for them. We do that really well in the marketing phase in our industry. So once a project is finished, it'll go through a ringer with a marketing company and they'll put together marketing assets like a trailer or advertisements, and those placements will be specific to the target populations and target audiences for that piece. But what we identified was an opportunity to engage audiences at the front end. So we've piloted a project with this activist, and we aren't announced yet, so I can't give too many details. But what we have been able to do is conduct surveys of a number of the people through the organization with which this activist works to understand the media consumption and viewing patterns of our target audience, which is this population of workers in a certain industry. It's not necessarily that this working population is underrepresented. I think we see a lot of stories about them, but we don't see a lot of authentic stories about these people. And so to really be able to engage actual workers to understand where they're already watching content, what form they like to watch in, which is to say, do they watch 30-minute TV shows? Do they watch hour-long TV shows? Do they prefer film format? Are they watching in the theaters? Are they watching on cable? Are they watching on streaming platforms? Are they watching pay-per-view? Are they watching comedies or dramas? Are they watching romantic stories, or they prefer romantic stories, or they prefer action thrillers? Gathering this information and being able to segment accordingly has allowed us to begin the development process with a creative team who understands fundamentally where our target audience is consuming their media and how to better ensure that we are delivering content to them, which is for them. And then with the involvement of the creative team and our consultant in the activists with whom we're working, that it's also by them. So for them, with them, by them. We also see that this is something which mitigates risk. So if we're looking at an investment opportunity in a production company, so whether that's the overhead and the way that a development and production company makes money is through fees and through back end, which is to say that after the film is released, the profit that comes in is split between the investors and the creative. And so the creative team will see some of that back end. And then also through producer fees for the physical production efforts of the producers at our company. But we're able to mitigate the risk and to create a higher likelihood of success to be able to see higher returns on that back end. So as we're talking about impact investment and what the opportunities are here, the sort of social and cultural impact that content has is very well known and understood. The Gina Davis Institute for Gender Diversity in Media puts out incredible studies which show I think one of them that struck me so powerfully was that women who identify with characters that they see on screen are more likely to leave abusive relationships. That was something that hit me really solidly, really close to home. So that sort of social and cultural impact is really well known. And I think that we also can see that there is a return available on dollars, and that being able to use data to segment that data accordingly and then to develop content with our audiences in mind creates a higher likelihood of success and therefore a higher likelihood of return.
Jess, that's fantastic. Thank you so much. Julie, you lead Tandem Pictures, and you have a really unique enterprise model. And you also are doing a lot to bring green practices into film and TV production. So tell us a little bit about what you do at Tandem Pictures.
Thanks, Laura. Hi, everyone. Again, my name is Julie Christeas. I am founder and CEO of Tandem Pictures, which is a conscious, independent film and branded content studio. So as Laura just said, I created a dual business model. And for people who aren't familiar with the film and TV space, what we do is we make independent film, and that's everything from working with a writer director to develop, what might be just the germ of an idea, through a screenplay, to building out the filmmaking team around that director and that screenplay, to casting the project, to going out and finding the financing for that project, and then being the physical on-set producers and shepherding that film through the festival premiere, sales and distribution stage. And similarly on the branded side, whether we're working with some of the largest publishing partners in the world, or whether we're working direct to brand or with an agency, we serve as holistic producers. And happily, there are so many brands now that are also conscious. This was a huge theme at Sundance branded storytelling in Park City this year. It was a huge theme. My partner, Johnny Blitzstein, went to Sustainable Brands in Detroit this year. Brands that are conscious of their product and their practices. And so we help look at what audience are you targeting, how much money do you want to spend, and what kind of story do you want to tell to reach that particular demographic. And other times the creative will be fully baked and will come on as a strategic partner to a larger agency and just execute the work. And then we'll serve as production services all the way through delivery of that branded content. And the reason that I made this dual business model is because I came up through the production offices in New York. I eventually got hired as an executive for another indie film company where I spent about a year, and I brought in some cool projects. I think Laurie referenced Monogamy that had Rashida Jones and Chris Messina, and a wonderful documentary piece that Hugh Jackman developed and starred in about coffee farming in the Kachore district of Ethiopia and poverty solutions in that area. And as I worked more and more with the team, which at that time was really a bunch of wonderful guys and myself, I felt privileged to be invited into that little circle. I realized that although they had investment in their company, they weren't recouping for that investor. They weren't profitable. And I started to really think about if I wanted to tell stories that I was passionate about, that involved a larger point of view in the world, that could put women first and speak for cultures and races and ideas that were outside of my own, how could I do that if I didn't have access to capital, which I didn't? And I thought, well, I know, I'll do the work myself. I will convince some of the publishing partners and brands that I've worked with to take a chance on a new production company and give them the same quality that they had gotten used to through using me as a producer, keeping our crews diverse, keeping our sets environmentally sound, putting women first, and using a piece of those profits to help develop the films that I ultimately wanted to tell. And that was in 2010, and 2019 we're still here, so I got pretty lucky on that end. The other piece that's really important to us is the idea of how we practice the work that we do. And my partner and I have to find partners that share the same ethos and heart that you do. I'm very lucky to have a partner, Johnny Blitzstein, who's on the West Coast, that shares the same values that I do, which is that we, believe in charitable give back at the end of the year. We believe in diversity, not only in front of the camera, but behind. That in this day and age, especially in New York and Los Angeles, there's just no excuse for having one age, one race, one point of view, one kind of person on set. There's just too many wonderful technicians and artists open to us. And environmental practices. As I mentioned, it's a huge theme right now. I hope that the metaphorical tidal wave, not a literal tidal wave, really sweeps everyone's practices where this is concerned. We made a feature film earlier this year in March. We are very proud to be able to apply for the EMA Green Seal. I hope we are approved for it because of our practices on set. In July, I'm producing another feature dealing with gender dynamic and stereotypes that's shooting up in the Adirondacks. We are working very hard to keep the natural beauty that we're privileged to film in. It's one of the huge draws of why we're going to that space to begin with, because it's beautiful and we hope will be commercially viable. It would be disingenuous to not treat that space with the respect that it deserves. And we're looking at everything from, again, for people who aren't familiar with film, crews can be 20 people to hundreds of people. There's a lot of waste. There's a lot of food waste, plastic waste. You can imagine the amount of trash bags that can accumulate just over the course of one day. So we're working with local gardens and nurseries to pick up that food waste and turn it into compost that go back into the community and green spaces. We're working to provide our crew members with reusable water bottles and hot beverage mugs so we can refill things as opposed to have to recycle everything. We're working to drive electrical vehicles where and when we can. And it's really these practices that inform our ability to create not only really exciting, entertaining commercial work, but work that is financially viable. And again, without any external investment, currently Tandem Pictures grows every single year. We're a profitable indie film company. And we're proud of that we've been able to do that through practices that we feel good about putting into the world.
Julie, that's fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Would love to shift to you, and you've got a really interesting story to tell. You wear two hats, both as a leader in the Cook Inlet Tribal Council community, but also as the chair of the board of a social impact video game producer called Eline Media. And you've been both an impact investor on behalf of Cook Inlet Tribal Council, as well as a social impact media producer. So tell us a little bit about the story, the partnership, about the game Never Alone that Eline released a few years ago, and about what's coming up next in terms of a slate of social impact video games that impact investors can get behind.
Great, thank you. I often ask myself how I find myself in these conversations because I would have never guessed in a million years that I would be in the video gaming industry. It's something that CITC's mission about connecting people to their potential through partnership, it really expresses, this journey expresses that entire mission. So I just need to tell a little bit about CITC and allow for you to see why our passion with the work that we do and connecting our people to their potential is so very important. So Cook Inlet Tribal Council is a tribal nonprofit organization. We serve up to about 12,000 Native American and Alaska Native people on an annual basis. And our goal is to advance our community. Our goal is to connect our people to their potential through opportunities and through partnership. And we do this in a very values-aligned method, working throughout our community, ensuring not only do we have the collective voice in our community and our mission, but also that we represent both youth and elders as well. And so as we thought about how we could move into a different model of sustainability where we're really in charge of our own destiny, and allow CITC to not only continue to work with the federal government in a trust responsibility, but to move on the paternalism that we have felt as Native people over the last 100 years. My leadership, tribal leadership and board came to me and said, we need to look at doing something different. We need to create an unrestricted line of revenue that we can reinvest back into CITC so we're not dictated by outside forces and how we align opportunity and invest in those resources. So what we thought about doing, since we're a tribal nonprofit organization, our focus is social services. We thought, how do we do this and do this well, but staying in the essence of our people and the values that we bring and utilizing the tools of our community. When we created our for-profit organization, we looked at everything from real estate to funeral homes, and we just said there's not the there. So our elders came to us and said, pick up the tools of this modern world and let that guide you, but don't forget who you are. Make sure we bring our voice into whatever we do. And that's when this beautiful relationship with Eline Media started, where we thought about this amazing skill that our community has in storytelling, and really wanting to have the desire to connect to our young people. And so I'd say about 5-ish years ago, we started looking around as part of our due diligence, knowing that we needed a partner whose values aligned with CITC in our community. And we kept coming up as we did our due diligence with Eline Media. And so I remember calling the president of the company and saying, hey, would you consider coming to Alaska and talking to us about this potential opportunity? And Mike Onks had not been to Alaska, so I think that's one of the reasons why he took our call and answered. And what I said to my leadership team is, if they are willing to come to Alaska in the middle of a snowstorm, we're willing to have that conversation. Because for us, all of our work starts with relationship and really knowing who our partners are. So that really started a beautiful alignment of values within both our organizations. And we realized after 3 days of intense conversation that this is something that we wanted to dive a little bit more deeply. And so we laid out a very intensive due diligence a process in which we went out as CITC, we found the right partners. We also looked at the industry, and we really felt as we looked at the industry that there wasn't a lot of genuine, authentic voice in making games. And what we thought is, if we took a little bit of a risk and did something different and co-created a game that would allow players to really immerse themselves in our community, that there was real opportunity. Now, we didn't start this to say we were going to pioneer a whole new collaborative approach and a creative process, but that's what happened. As we created Never Alone, we paired elders, we paired storytellers, we paired the talent of the Alaska Native Inupiaq community with the talent of Eline Media. We shared creative decisions in that process. We actually involved our community in ensuring that we were making those right creative decisions. We launched Never Alone in 2014, and I have to tell you, it's quite a ride in this industry. And it was just amazing, the feedback that we received worldwide, the feedback and the support. And what's incredible about this is Never Alone continues to sell in the marketplace. That's really unheard of as it relates to a game product. So we knew we were onto something here, and that's when we decided to take a deeper dive into the company itself after our experience in the inclusive development creative process. And so what we did is we did a deal with Eline, and where we matched our management team and integrated that with future games in Eline and ensuring that we could be a part of that development process, bring what we have learned together to Eline. As a result of the deal, we took about 30% of the company. And I serve as the executive chair, along with my colleague Amy Ferdine, who serves as their CFO. And I would just say that it's been really an incredible process to this point. We have learned a lot. I believe there's great opportunity in bringing indigenous, real, authentic, genuine indigenous voice into media and doing it in such a way that is respectful with shared decisions, and that allows for an end product that people actually feel the magic of the stories and also in experiencing the community. So where we are right now is, as I said, Never Alone was a great validator for Eline Media. We have 2 major games going to the marketplace in 2019, Beyond Blue, which is a science-grounded ocean exploration game. And we have developed that in partnership with BBC and the Ocean X, the Dalio Queen, and The Endless Mission, which is a creation sandbox game that empowers players to play, hack, and unlock powerful tools. So this is really aligning with that, actually the need in the world of developing more coders and allowing the gamers to really not only have a great fun experience, but developing some skills and tools along the way. So as we have honed this, I would say the strategic direction within Eline Media, it was really important for us as we continue to bring in impact investors to look at how we could de-risk the investment. And, you know, I had learned along the way after jumping into after doing our deep dive, but jumping into the deep end of the pool, as I'd like to say it, is that it's really difficult to actually make a big return on one game, right? Those are far and few between. And so we know that. So what we are doing now is creating a slate that we want to put out to the impact investor community that really allows us to build on Eline's experience in developing and publishing games, that allows us to build on our key partners that we have established with distributors and influencers and consumers in the marketplace. We've also thought about how people can get a revenue interest position, and that this is why I think this is so important to use the approach of slate investing, is because investors will see a return on their investment as the games start to generate revenue. So that's key, because if you take an equity investment in a company, sometimes you have to wait and find the exit opportunity. So that could be a longer term investment. And of course, this I think this portfolio approach really allows investors to diversify. It allows impact investors to really think about what their values are and what where they want to see the impact of their dollars. And so as Eline is building out the slate with the 2 games going to the world market, we also have a pipeline of other potential partners. For example, we've just recently brought in the Choctaw Indian community, and we'll be working with them. We're looking at developing Never Alone 2, the sequel. We have people who ask us about it every day, and we have other games that are in the queue. So I think that this slate vehicle is going to really help people as it relates to de-risking their investment, but also putting their money into something that they really care about. And I'm excited about this field. I think that there's a lot of opportunity in it, and we're excited to have our Indigenous voice and our Indigenous values and our relationships be a part of it.
Gloria, that's fantastic. Thank you so much. So Charles, I'm going to turn it over to you, but just for the folks who are listening to this, even if you haven't heard of Macro, I'm sure you've seen some of the productions that Macro stands behind, like Fences and Mudbound and Get Out. And I love inviting Charles into these conversations because not only does Macro have a mission and purpose that aligns with the things you've already heard others talk about, authentic storytelling, culturally rich storytelling, diverse viewpoints, but Macro is an example where impact investment capital has already landed in the social impact media space. And Macro has received program-related investments from 5 big foundations, including Ford Foundation, Emerson Collective, Kellogg Foundation, and others. So Charles can speak not only to why he founded Macro and what the experience is in the production company, but also how important it is to align with investors who share your values and can bring real expertise and strategic capital to help you be successful financially. So Charles, over to you.
All right. Thanks so much, Laura. And I'm really excited to be here with all of you today. First off, by the way, yes, Fences and Mudbound were 2 of our projects. I wish the Get Out was one of ours. I love that movie. It was incredible. That was all Jordan Peele and Monkey Paw and Jason Blum. But we were involved with another film, Sorry to Bother You, that came out of Sundance last year and was very well received in the marketplace. And then other movies as well, but those are some of our films. So yes, Macro is a multi-platform media company representing the voice and perspective of people of color. We finance, we develop, we produce film, television, short-form digital content, and we're also beginning to really build out experiential opportunities and community around live events. The last 2 years, we've had the Macro Lodge at Sundance. We also are continuing to do other events where we bring people from these diverse and inclusive communities together to talk about storytelling content, but also the ways that they intersect with community and issues around uplifting culture. At the center of what we're doing with Macro, we're looking to have a positive impact on communities on a global level through content and culture, but we're also looking at economically empowering communities who've been historically left out of the ecosystem. And so those are 2 larger themes when we thought about launching this company and what part of our mission was in building it. Why I started? Prior to launching this company, I was a senior partner at William Morris Endeavor, where I represented artists across every sector of entertainment: film, television, music, media personalities, moguls, you name them. I represented so many of the most incredible needle-moving artists and entrepreneurs in the space. What I did recognize while being at the center of this ecosystem in Hollywood was that of all of the studios, networks, production companies, financing entities, there was no one who was a person of color who could greenlight a film or a television show, was financing these films. And what I recognized was that, if you have the fastest growing demographics in the country, African Americans are watching 40% more television. Almost half of every person who buys a ticket to see a film is a person of color, yet they were completely left out of this marketplace of deciding what stories are going to be told and how they were going to be told. So the unique position that I had as a senior partner with all of the years of experience in packaging films and having the relationships at every network, at every studio, and knowing how to put these projects together, I recognized that I wanted to move the marketplace to show that this could be done, so that others could think similarly and we could have a positive, disruptive impact on the ecosystem to create more opportunity. And so when I launched in 2015, it was well ahead of the Oscar so white conversation that took place. The timing could not have been better, obviously, because it was a subject and a topic that was on everyone's radar at that point. So as I went and began to put together our initial core group of investors, and I would share the message as to the mission behind the company, it became clear, particularly in my earliest meeting with the team at Emerson Collective, that it was the first time I actually heard the term, oh, I see the impact. It was the first time I learned about impact investors. And what Laureen Powell-Jobs and her team at Emerson saw was that there was a tremendous business opportunity, but also an opportunity to have real impact in this space. And so they were our anchor investor at the launch of our operating company, but then we also brought in other mission-aligned, curated investors from private equity, from Wall Street, strategic investors from the media sector, and of course my family invested heavy 7 figures alongside all of our investors to show that we were also in and that we were all mission aligned. And what I did notice through this process too, when you think about investors were interested in some perspective. They're long-term investors that wanted to see the long-term growth of the operating company. But then there were other investors that were more interested in specific projects and the production of content. And so as we started the company, we launched the holding company, but then a year into it, we launched a fund, and it was a content fund to finance the slate of movies and television shows, some of the shows that we talked about, Fences and Mudbound, Sorry to Bother You, and the slate of movies that will continue to come out over the course of the next few years. That's where not only Emerson, but that's where the Ford Foundation, the Kellogg Foundation, and the Lieber Foundation that's where they invested, because they wanted to actually invest in a company that had experience, that had an infrastructure, but that was investing in content that fit the mission of their foundation and their initiatives. And so that's where the program, PRI, program-related investments, came through that vehicle, because they were more interested in actually seeing the content that was going to move the needle and that was representative of the goals and mission of their foundations. And when we think about the movies that we've been involved in and the content that we continue to support, they're things that will bring communities together. They're authentically representing people of color. They are showing the spectrum and the range of stories from communities that have yet to be told, because so many communities have only seen one stereotypical image of the representation of those people. And so what we're doing as a company is we're supporting filmmakers, whether it's A-level filmmakers like Denzel Washington, who would create Fences, would show this incredible father-son family story, or whether it's a provocative or auteur like Boots Riley with such a thought-provoking film like Sorry to Bother You. And so, and in making these range of films and content, we also believe it can bring people together and can build bridges. So a film like Mudbound, you've got, you're showing the shared experience of an African-American family who are sharecroppers, and the white family who were the landowners, and the universality of all of what they were dealing with at that time. And so we believe that these stories can tremendously impact communities and can uplift culture. But at the same time, what we're also doing with this fund vehicles is generating generous returns, and the content that we're creating is performing extraordinarily well. And we believe that the two can all coexist at the same time. You have a robust community that's thirsty to see themselves on screens, large and small. You have a thirst for these stories. And you also have these stories that we're telling have a tendency, because they're so underserved, these communities are so underserved, they overperform when they're at the box office, or they perform well on streaming platforms and networks because there's not enough content that represents them. So we're at the same time, it's great business while also content that is uplifting the world and creating a positive impact. And then a company like Macro and the fund that we've created performing extraordinarily well in the marketplace has now paved the road for numerous other companies to now launch similar initiatives, to raise capital, to think entrepreneurially, so that it can overall have a change on the entire Hollywood and studio and independent film ecosystem.
Charles, that's fantastic. And I'd just like to contribute one other piece to this conversation. We've talked about the different structures for the operating businesses. We've talked about the importance of distribution channels and being able to target and connect with the intended audiences. We've talked about the importance of content and authentic cultural storytelling. There's another piece that's really the economic story, the community development story, and that has to do with where production happens, the jobs that get generated, the economic multiplier that happens in a community when film and TV comes into that community, what that means in terms of attracting future tourism dollars. So the piece that Julie's talking about happening in the Adirondacks, people might be introduced to that region of New York State, see how beautiful it is. Next time they're figuring out where to take the family on vacation, they might go there versus someplace else because film and TV introduce them to that area. So you've seen places like the state of Georgia over time make dedicated investments to build a film, TV, media economy as an economic development strategy within the state. Every TV series generates between 150 and 200 production jobs. These aren't the writers and the actors and the directors. These are the folks who are the carpenters and the electricians, the drivers. They're doing the catering service, the hair and makeup. These are the industrial workers of content production. These are good jobs, they're union jobs for the most part, and this is a real opportunity to substitute for the traditional manufacturing jobs of America of the past. They're better jobs than in the service sector, in the retail sector. These are opportunities, these are jobs that can't be replaced easily by automation. So it's really important that there be a diverse workforce prepared to go into these production jobs, and that we recognize this as a real economic development engine for communities beyond just Hollywood, beyond just Manhattan. These are opportunities that can go to other parts of the country as well. So let me pause there, and Laurie, send it back to you to moderate some Q&A based on questions we've gotten from folks who've been listening with us so far.
Thank you, Laura, and thank you, panelists. That was wonderful. So we've got some really great questions in the queue. You're free to keep posting them as we go along. I'm going to go right from the top of the list with Derek's question because it's received the most upvotes so far. And I'll ask the panelists if one or two of you could provide an answer for a given question, that would be great. We don't need all of you to provide answers just because we want to get to as many of these questions as possible. So Derek asks or says, New Athens Creative is a seed stage streaming service that identifies and crowdfunds equity-based quality TV shows from the growing field of unsold pilots and sizzle reels. What is your best advice to aggregate those unsold content pieces from talent agencies?
I think that should go to Charles so he can tap into his former talent agency past.
Can you repeat the question one more time?
Sure, let me pull it back. Okay, what is your, so Derek asks, he says that his company is a seed stage streaming service that identifies and crowdfunds equity-based quality TV shows from the growing field of unsold pilots and sizzle reels. So he's asking, what is your best advice to aggregate these unsold content pieces from talent agencies?
In terms of aggregating them, I'm not sure. What I would do is I would actually look at them. I would try to curate and find pieces from that actually resonate, take them and use them as IP and package, figure out what it is that, that resonates with them, see if they can find some additional elements to add to it, and then build a story to try to get them sold. I mean, I've been able to, with Macro, our first couple of television shows have started with IP that was put out on the internet. There's a show called Raising Dion about an 8-year-old kid who's a superhero being raised by a single mom that was created by Dennis Liu, who was a a guy who did commercials and music videos, and he wrote a graphic novel, and he put together a 3-minute short sizzle that went along with it, and he put it out on the internet, and it took off virally. And then people all over town, studios and production companies were chasing him. And then from that, there was a bidding war. We got it at the same time that Michael B. Jordan got it. We put it together and took it to Netflix. So I would say find something that's compelling from that group of content that you've been aggregating. See if you can put it together with some other packageable elements, a star or a filmmaker, and then go tell the story and try to go get it set up that way. And I think that you'll find that there's so many stories that someone tried to tell in one way, but then you just have to find another way to tweak it, and then you can hopefully find success somewhere else.
Thank you. Let's move on to another question. Let me just say, Craig, you've got a question at the top of the queue there that's asking about a new digital TV network. Are you referring to the one I mentioned at the beginning, Impact Entrepreneurs one we're doing, or one of the panelists' projects? Yes, okay. Then I'll briefly mention that, but that we're finishing our first season of webinars. We've done about 25 of them, had really spectacular, often very profound content in them, and I'm looking for ways to broaden the audience for them and create them. So publishing parts or all of selected webinars is going to be initially the first part of Impact Entrepreneur TV, but expanding from there to other kinds of programming is certainly something we're looking at. So thanks for that question, and happy to talk to you more about it, Greg. Okay, let's move on to the next question. Kai asks, hi, I'm a media and content producer. My company is called Young Atlas. We are looking to produce our first short film. For someone new, what are some tips for securing financing for our first short film project?
Maybe I'll suggest that Julie take a stab at that as someone who's been thoughtful about different ways to create revenue, earn it, as well as attract financing to projects.
Hey, Kai, I like the name of your company, Young Atlas. Well, I don't know if your short is serving as a proof of concept for a larger feature film, or if it's meant to be a standalone piece that breaks out a director or an actor. I would say in the marketplace, I have a true affinity for short films. I think they're little jewels, and I made a film called Bushwick Beats that's a compilation and an anthology of all short films. I adore them. But in the marketplace, they're very tough. My best advice to you would be get out there and make it, but really take into consideration your budget. When you're looking for financing, I would work with your director and I would work with your designers to really think about how you can achieve the highest level of creative vision at the lowest level of budget. And that's because shorts don't often make a return on an investment. But the return on the investment is getting to the next project. If you can make something that stand out, that does get attention, critical attention at a festival, that does break out a performer in a beautiful first debut moment, or a director, then you're on to something, and people will notice you and your company for that beautiful piece. But I would say keep your budget as low as you can.
I've also got a couple of thoughts there. I think that the digital space is a really interesting place for people to be looking to produce things in the short form. The piece that we just wrapped up, that Invisible Pictures just wrapped up in New Orleans, was a series of short form episodes, sort of like a Black Mirror meets Get Out. And we were able to partner with a studio like Topic because they have a digital platform and are interested in putting money, investing money into projects like ours and possibly like yours, in order to be able to increase, as Julie mentioned, their IP. and the intellectual property that they own. And so if there is an interest either in developing your short film into a feature or into a series, there are a number of companies in the industry, Topic being one of them, Quibi is also an interesting one, and a handful of others which do have opportunities to develop and to produce short form content. I also think that as Julie said, going out and just making it is a very smart thing, and crowdfunding is a really good opportunity and a good way to do that. So, you know, we all know the Kickstarters and the Indiegogos, but there are also up and coming platforms like Seed and Spark, which are really great places for content creators and producers to start to look for financing.
Seed and Spark is a great suggestion, and that will really also help you identify your audience. You know, the people that often crowdfund your project end up being the people who want to go view your project, and you end up learning a lot about what you have as well. That's good advice, Jess. Terrific.
Gloria has put in the chat an answer to her request, her contact information, and if any of you are looking to be in touch with someone, you can send a message to the panelists asking how the best way to reach them is. And panelists, if you are able to respond with the appropriate information, that'd be great. John asks, I'm curious, this one's for Gloria. I'm curious how Gloria measures the social impacts of the games on the users and tribal communities. For example, are the games helping the gamers get jobs, engage more with their local communities and cultures, etc.? If so, how is that measured? Also, are there any impacts on the employees beyond a paycheck? Great question.
Great question. First of all, it was really important for us when we developed Never Alone with Eline Media, as I said, that we involved all aspects of our community in that. And so because of our close connections in the state of Alaska and our community, we had real-time feedback of impact. The other thing that I'd like to say is what we did when we started to dream about making Never Alone, we wanted to dream beyond our own tribal community borders. We wanted to create an experience where there was real affinity with our stories and our way of life with the global population. And so the way we've been able to measure that is we've had literally hundreds of millions of impressions through social media, through all the different types of traditional media, and just connecting with people. I would say, in addition to that, we have had on a weekly basis individuals reach out to us from universities, from school districts, from various indigenous communities, and they want to know more about our co-creative process with Eline and developing Never Alone, but also we've been able to infuse that co-creative process within curriculum across school districts within our state and beyond. And so I would say that we have asked ourselves these questions about how do we best measure our impact? And we have done that through our close relationships and connections within the community. And of course, as I said, then looking at all of the impressions on a global basis. As it relates to the workforce, this is something that we really thought about intentionally as we started this process. We engaged our local university as it relates to the skills and abilities within our community. And what we did was we created partnership so deeply with Eline team that we sent some of our storytellers, we sent some of our writers, our elders, and immersed them into the game studio itself. So we do have a long-term commitment and building skills in our community to ensure that our people have the ability to choose to live anywhere in the world and really be a part of this creation process working with us.
Thank you. Angela, we're going to get to your question. I'm going to skip the framing and get right to your question, just so we save time for some others here. Angela asks, I was wondering, how do the panelists find traditional media's receptivity to content aimed at having a social impact? when pitching this kind of content to mass media, is there good reception or resistance? If it's the latter, what would it take to penetrate the market with social impact content for mass media?
So maybe Charles, if you want to kick that off and then open it up to others as well.
Yeah, I think first and foremost, when you're creating content, it has to be entertaining. People are going to want to go see it in a movie theater or watch it. So what we try to do is make sure that the message and the themes are embedded in it, that are embedded in what we're making, and so that you're not hitting people over the head, you're not preaching to them, but that there's still that the message and the substance is there. So I'll just use an example for a film we just executive produced and we're we're investors in. So Bryan Stevenson, his book Just Mercy was made into a feature film at Warner Brothers that stars Michael B. Jordan, Jamie Foxx, and Brie Larson. Destin Critten's a filmmaker. Macro co-invested alongside Warner's, Scott Budnick's company, and Participant. We all believed in the incredible work that Bryan Stevenson's been doing around criminal justice reform, but we also knew that this was going to be a compelling film with movie stars, and there's an entire campaign that Scott Budnick and his team are doing alongside of the traditional marketing of the film for Warner Brothers. That will include a lot of the investors in our content fund, from Ford Foundation to Emerson Collective and Kellogg, because all of those organizations are supporting issues around criminal justice reform. But at the same time, their investment in Macro's fund and our investment in this film will generate a very healthy financial return as well. But in order to do all of this, we needed movie stars that were compelling, a great filmmaker, and an amazing narrative. But at the same time, this is absolutely going to shine the work on Bryan Stevenson's doing, and I believe will have a strong impact on issues around criminal justice reform. And so that's how we go about doing it, and trying to find entertaining ways to also have a message and impact embedded within it.
And Gloria, you already referred to the gameplay, right? Like the game's got to be fun. And I know the Line team talks about this a lot, that just because it's an interesting, an interesting setting or an interesting community, it's still got to be a compelling game. So maybe you can share a parallel from the game side.
Absolutely. And so as we went through our creative process, we decided to take some risk. And that was connected back to what I spoke to earlier around being authentic, and how do we create experience so when the gamers are immersed in the experience of playing the game, that they could feel and understand what the Arctic looked like, how it is to be immersed in such a beautiful and harsh environment. And doing that, we really thought about what mechanisms to use, how we built out the game, how we paired Nuna, who is the Anupiaq girl, the protagonist, with her companion White Fox, and how we created those adventures so that the gamers really understood not only what Nuna was trying to accomplish in the gameplay, but they had a lot of fun doing so, and that there was incredible challenge in that as well. Again, we went back to this premise that if we built a game that our people loved, and that was based upon our people's stories and where we live and our way of life, and we made it fun, that the rest of the world would feel that as well.
Thanks. I think we got time for another one. Ikumi, who's a graduate student at Columbia University and is writing a thesis on impact investment in theater and the theater industry. What a great subject. I feel for now, says Ikumi, social impact of the project is principally done through initiatives, but how do you measure the social impact to the investors? Do you think the platform that lists projects with such measurements for the investors will help accelerate more impact investing in the creative industry?
So Laurie, I'll take that one, because at Upstart we think a lot about how to demonstrate both the financial return and the social impact across the creative economy. And if you go to the Upstart website, and under the tab around Creativity Lens, you'll see that we've included a landscape of 50 different methods that are already out in the world that demonstrate the social impact of creativity and culture. So we can have a long conversation about what can happen through creativity and culture that drives resilience within communities, that helps people to identify with folks who are different from them. You know, we can talk about a lot of things that are very special to the creative and culture space. But at Upstart, since we're talking with impact investors, we wanted to make the creative economy seem similar and familiar and accessible, and show impact investors how it fits the way they already think about their investment portfolio. So we talk about how an investment in the creative economy can drive something positive for the environment. Julie was giving the example of environmentally friendly practices on a film TV set, right? And so investing in a sustainable fashion company or sustainable film production is a way that you're going to be able to achieve a goal around environmental sustainability. We talk about how jobs get created through the creative economy. I was describing that before, and that these can be quality jobs, and these can be jobs that replace past jobs that might have been in manufacturing, while the US is not such a manufacturing economy anymore, right? We talk about how we've observed the creative economy serving as an on-ramp to opportunity for women entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs of color. The panelists joining us today represent that in the media space, but we've observed that there are a lot of entrepreneurs who seemed to get their foothold in the creative economy because the barriers to entry are different. They're lower. You don't need a PhD in electrical engineering from Stanford and millions of dollars to start your bakery or even start your fashion label, right? And so we see the creative economy as being particularly aligned with the goal that many investors have, many impact investors have around gender equity and social justice, diversity, equity, and inclusion. So we've started the conversation around impact measurement for impact investments in the creative economy by showing how the creative economy is a way to get more of the impact that impact investors already seek. And in a few years, when the creative economy is more of a mainstay in the impact investing conversation, I'm looking forward to having that dialogue about what the rest of the economy can learn from the creative economy in terms of an ability to see things that aren't right in front of us, to imagine and look into the future and to see that gray area. The ability of the creative economy to solve problems and to bring new solutions to old problems. The ability of the creative economy to value cognitive diversity and people who think different. But for today, we're starting by showing how the creative economy can deliver for the environment, for women, for people of color, for communities, in ways that impact investors already understand.
Thank you, Laura. Well, we're at time, a little past it, so we're going to end the webinar now. What I generally do in a situation where we've got several really good more questions that people had asked that we didn't get to, I've cut and pasted those questions into a document, and I'm going to share that with you when I send you all an email via Eventbrite in the next hour or two that will have a link and password to this video so you can restream it, especially if you miss part of it. And I will include in that email the questions that were not asked, just so that they get further voice out into this really interesting group of people. So anyway, if that link and password will be available for about a week. And then after that, it'll be on our archive on our website, along with the other programs in the series. That's again, www.impactalchemist.com. impactdontrepreneurial.com. And then, as I said, starting next month, we're going to be putting some of this wonderful content on our new YouTube channel. So you might want to subscribe to that. Laura, thank you so much for your amazing facilitation here. It was most excellently done. And also a deep thanks to Gloria, Charles, Jess, and Julie for joining us and providing us with such valuable insight into the social impact media space. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Laurie.
And thank you all for joining us today. Take care now. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.